I think early on in units, changing the study. He had talked about check. My son had the same thing. So check somebody. So he wanted to avoid that. Next in line is the overview of system. So moving from the teachings about the crisis to Tim leading the group of us and doing that more recently. System of profound knowledge. System of supporting each other. Theory of variation, understanding variation. Theory of knowledge. How do you know something? How do you learn something? Theory of psychology. What about people? How are they put together? How do they know whether they're good? An appreciation for a system. So this was introduced in 1990. And it was really a revamp of his early work. His 40th seminar in 91, he revived quite a bit. Ian and I were and General Motors, we had our own 4-day seminars, and we had a company that purchased Hughes Aerospace. We had access to a set of satellites, and we did simultaneous broadcast at numerous locations. So we would get 12 locations. One site was live. And Dr. Deming would do a session in the morning, a session afternoon. And late morning and end of the day, the satellite video would go down. And local folks would be minders, proctors. And if anybody wants to see it, this is the 1991 October book that was covered. So I'll send that over to everybody. But that's the system of profound knowledge. So let's get into it a little bit. Theory of variation. Let's talk about statistics, common and special causes. Talks about analytic versus numerical study. Two kinds of mistakes. We'll throw in a bonus. We're going to talk about the reach and loss function. Outcome variation. Showing you some data. Some
must be small.
just a histogram. These are the results of some process. Okay? And hard to read the numbers at the bottom. This is a histogram, so this is a collection of observations. There are 200 observations. It can be anything. Let's say it's a number of calls fielded per hour by a customer service organization. Somebody can't read this very well. LSL, USL, upper spectrum and lower spectrum. So somebody's decided arbitrarily that there's some boundaries we don't want to exceed. We don't have to communicate. What's your interpretation of what you see based on what I just said? Are we in good shape? What do you think? What's the outcome? What's that?
Great.
Great shape, absolutely. So, yeah, I don't understand why, where does the spectrum come from? It looks great, right? So
Why does it look great? I don't understand.
because there's a lower limit that's been specified, a big black line,
We're within,
upper limit, and we're right in the middle, tails don't go anywhere near those.
the top around the toasted, that's not really toasted. It's the
Right,
whole toasts.
exactly. It's great, great. Dick,
Does it quantify the knowledge?
that's the point of it. It can appear to, so the question is, what's the process? What's the process look like that delivered that? What we're really interested in is we're managing the system. This is what happened. We're happy that it happened. What we're interested in is what's going to happen. Management's responsible for the results of the future, not just the results of today. So let's look at what's the result, what's the process to give us this result?
Stay with the upper and lower limits.
Yeah.
What's your impression of, like, how unlikely is that to happen in the real world?
I would say it depends. It depends on if it's an engineering, it's the functionality that makes something, it's going to depend on how close it is. And the other starts with 5. This is a pure data, but in a customer satisfaction, customer service environment, you probably want to know how much, what's a reasonable number for your team to build and maintain. So,
For number of effects.
well, defects, you don't want to accept that. Don't forget.
Well, is this kind of a way of describing how you can have a process that seems to be controlled but is incapable?
Well, this is demonstrating that you don't know it's so you look at the data differently. So let's look at the data that caused that yield of this histogram. So one way it could happen is this. It looks stable. Now this is sometimes confusing because when I say it looks stable, wait a minute, it's going up and down one. Yeah, but the amount it's going up and down by over time remains kind of consistent. So if I told you that's what it was, you would call that common cause common cause. Common means that the cause system that yielded those results remains constant over time. Special cause means that in addition to whatever common cause, something special happened. Something is out of whack. It could be out of whack bad, could be out of whack good. So if you have that situation, your faith on what's going to happen in the future is different than this situation. So what are some other in at play? Here's 2 other underlying patterns that could have been the result. By the way, these are the same 200 figures. 200 points that made up that histogram are the same 200 points, just arranged differently over time. So if you in the business of whatever we talked about that data had that beautiful, worse than pretty, and you look at the data and look like that, what would be your faith that it's going to continue? It looks like something special is going on and we're drifting upwards. Something's going on. You know what it is? No, we don't. But something is happening. That's your signal. You need to go investigate what is happening because there is a special cause going on. Let's see, what's going on there? It looks like some small, then it drops. And then it's drifting up, and then it's a little variation in it. So- Yes, Dick.
Does it have to be special on the upper curve? I'm thinking of where.
That's a special cause. It's predictable, but it's not common overall time period. It's drifting in a uniform pattern, and that's common in tool work, but that's still called a special cause, which is called there.
Okay, but I mean, you can put it down as stable. I mean,
But the rate of change is stable, so it's stably unstable. Right?
right.
Okay.
Predictably unstable.
Predictably unstable. So you can work with it. But it's still a special cause.
Operational definition of what a special cause is.
Okay, but yeah, you can have the same data. And
Well, if you need control of this, just said control this on an X moving range chart. From one dot to another, the ranges, we average those and estimate the variance into the process.
Yeah.
That's a narrow band drifting up.
Stability and predictability.
That one is a wide. So we're controlling this wide here. If you started with the first 25 points, top one, you make a control chart, and then go out of control. So by definition, but you need to put automatic adjustment.
But wait, is it if the like the rate from where is constant, right? Or where something, but then it would be interesting. I think in some cases, I think is that special cause that happens in that constant rate is very predictable rate.
yeah, what I would. Because the goal here is to way to learn. And that's why you want to do that.
The reason you want to separate special and common causes is because to make an improvement, what you need to do is different.
That's where the efficiency comes in. You know, you still want to learn. And how do you learn so you maximize your time?
Right.
Or
Make mistakes. That's all. Which brings us to mistakes. Two kinds of mistakes you can make. One kind of mistake is special cause. And in fact, we've gone on the system common cause. Mistake two, describe the variation of the state system common cause, when in fact it's special. And if you got mistake one, very common way that occurs is over adjustment. Make one, it's off 4 notches below the target. Turn it down as much as you think it's going to get up 4 notches, make another one. And that way, you double your variation. So,
That's the automobility way thing, right?
no, if you just do make adjustment each time, you just double your variance. Make a wider band, because you're always making adjustment back to the target.
What the funnel experiment teaches.
Yeah, and I'm not going to cover the funnel experiment.
you can cover taking a shower in the morning. Come how you get the right chunk.
Yeah, making adjustments on the, you can over adjust that, go full on, it's too hot, go full cold, it's too cold. Just keep making that mistake over and over.
And you may not realize that you only get a small water heater for every room.
It's like, should recommended since they say one novel then as well as two novel. That lowers your total cost. And this was interesting when we were first putting this process on the road. You hear guys talk about, okay, we're gonna miss some mistake. Let me make it closer. We're gonna miss the chance of making it through. So they would reduce the control chart limits. 2 plus or 2 sigma. Instead of 3. Well, you minimize what we've done. And again, control is in this case next moving range chart. Jason, we already talked about this. If you made a control chart on this one, you would end up with control line. So now, enumerative versus analytic. Enumerative studies. It's just a name. This means looking at examining, you call something that you're looking at a frame. So a collection of items. And the idea is there's a universe, and there's from that universe you're going to draw a sample. You're going to take a subset. The subset is from the universe, and then those are labeled so that you can from the frame text. When you do that, you can use spirit to describe the frame. You can describe what percent of, say an iron ore, train load full of iron ore. If you want to take samples, if you do it the right way, such that the idea of an enumerative study is that you've got all of the information that you might get, you could get, because you've got the frame in front of you, and it's representative of what you got. Analytic, same process that generates universes. And the one you got today is today. The future is included. And you can't take a random sample of the future. So the distinction is enumerative, enumerating something that you could look at. Analytic is what you're doing to make predictions of the future. And
How's the frame selected?
the frame is selected based on convenience, what you're trying to accomplish. So with the frame static, that's enumerative. If the frame is an ongoing process, well, you'll look at a period of time and you'll make some analysis of it. The difference is that there's the opportunity for special cause in the future, and you don't know what's going to happen in the future. You could make a prediction, but very easily could be wrong. That's why you need statistical process control instead of just sampling. A little bit more, but that's what it is.
Well, I think that's really a useful framing. It's often on phototype. When what studies and stuff are described, it's just assumed that you're whereas you're really accessing it right, thinking about how the framing influence, but that's actually an analytic problem, understanding. So, like survey, surveys all the time. They have the surveys, who's going to vote or whatever, how they do it, how they actually go do it. Well, they send some of the angle wall and they stop people. That's right. Well, they stop the guy who's in the death box outfit or versus the arrogant one with kids. And they're just accessing who has to be involved. For inference about voters in general. There's a lot of difference, right? I mean, who may be in this population who accesses the brain, involved, or who has the phone. This is that population. If you really want to draw that inference, then you have to use something like knowledge and say, in what ways might the populations might be different, how might that matter, and
So Ian, could I just ask, so Ian, in that example, then mall is the frame?
Yeah.
Right, and then you're sampling.
Well, probably the groupings of malls that were selected to go to, all of the locations that you sampled from would be the frame.
Gotcha.
And thank you for, so when you want to look at the future, you don't have access to that yet. It's not a statistical question. It's some statistical brings some information. It's really subject matter expertise. What could be different? What's the underlying process? What are the ways it could be different in the future? And do we have control of that or do we not?
Well, future, you got me kind of stuck on that word. It's, culturally, as in Ian's example of surveys, the future is 2 weeks from now or 2 weeks in the past. We're doing surveys so frequently. Now, my future when I was 40 was retiring at 60. So my future is way out. But at 59, it's like it's here. So how far out in the future am I looking? 40 years, 30 years? Or culturally, like Japan, where the future is way out there. That affects how you think
Yes.
in your development processes for a product or a service. It's the future going to be. Can you imagine thinking in 1995, those of us that were here in 2002, and the tripods were 3 times that size, and the cameras were 1.5 feet long. Audio was, it was very monotone. You couldn't see us doing it. Even 2 years ago, when we talked about starting and looked at this concept. So future is hard to imagine.
the thing that's really helpful about this whole piece here is it's you need to try and there's a core system. There's over time, there's over space or whatever, right? There's a core system that's creating universes. You're accessing one through a frame at a particular point in time in a particular space. If you're interested in it's all about understanding the relationship between the core system and the universe. So how do factors that change in the core system in the universe, how might we explain that? So it's the knowledge piece. The traditional statistics class, so it was just like sampling. That's how you quantify error. Most of the error is nothing to do with self. Most of the error is good knowledge of those relationships, those factors, how they might change over time.
And that's all subject matter knowledge based on the cause system.
The kind of the key message here is the best you can do is try and look something.
Best you can do is what? Yes. So, let me answer your question.
Not looking for an answer, just making a comment.
All right, Taguchi lost one. So, usually people starting out with a process what's required. I'm thinking in engineering terms, but it is in customer satisfaction and other things. There's a low and a common thing that people would do in industry when I was in engineering kind of work as well, it's inspect, it's good. And that was a general belief because what you said that was the lower limit, so everything above that was good. And here's not below that, but going to the other side. turns out though that a lot of products, there's an optimum, right? And the optimum is the lowest loss associated with whatever variations on it. And so she came up with the idea that the lowest loss is what you want to try to achieve, not just within spec. So the loss function is kind of a function. And they're not all middle is best. You can have lowest is best, you know, highest is best. But this was a typical loss function. And you have fits between moving parts, and the best result for lowest friction, highest power, lowest noise, best transmissibility through power, through leakage of oil. There's all kinds of things. This is so I just want to dig into this concept. Well, lowest loss occurs at a particular area. Good at design, you know what that is. Don't you?
It does, Kavichi was talking more about loss at the society level as well, too, right? Not
He
just-
certainly was. It was applied at the micro level and then the
Because the loss function, if I'm just operator, and to me that's the only universe I'm concerned about. I'm gonna do something that's easiest for me to get that's on to the next guy. But if you expand the frame, if you instruct then the loss function actually decreases because I did such a lousy job. It was easy for me, but I mean,
yes. So with the knowledge of where is the loss function, what is the loss function, it means that it's worth continually moving production variation around the idea.
what would best for him in terms of
Exactly.
further on that, all the way out to the end user as well as community around the user.
Yes. All right. Red bead experiment belongs here for understanding variation. But there is a red bead experiment being conducted in Stanford. I don't want to take any bill of sales, so I'm going to not say too much about that. How many folks have? Okay, so I'm not the only one. But I will basically demonstrate some state one. They assume that there's something special happening with the behavior of the results obtained by the gathered beads. Somebody's done it the best, somebody's done it the worst. And it's because of that darn worker. They ended up deciding to keep the best three workers because they were the best of this. And so the prediction was, well, because the workers cost red beads, take ones with low red beads, and of course that doesn't work because there's a mistake made. And so it makes the case though for using SBC and even for using SBN processes of management. And what are some management processes that might be worth studying with variation over time? Something that's worth doing. Accidents, absenteeism, portion of orders shipped on time, complaints from customers, no matter hours spent in meetings. Some things that might be worthwhile doing. Anybody use this? Anybody use any of this?
So, company started bringing in some lean tools, and I went to a lean conference, and they were talking about process behavior charts. And I looked at that and said, "That's magic." Before they were using upper control limits, they would just draw a line. So we were a distributor, so we looked at fill rates for orders. So total fill rate, then line fill rate. And we said, well, what's good, what's bad? Well, I don't know, 97 is the top end, because anything higher than that, you're overspending. And so for our daily management, each one of our KPIs, we put process behavior charts. It was awesome because when we did an improvement, then you'd see a shift in the results. We get rid of the old data, set a new standard, and we can sustain. So it was probably one of the biggest aha moments of my career was layering in process behavior charts on top of metrics that were driving behaviors.
Excellent. So key points of variation, stability is the basis for prediction. You have a stable process, you have a reason for making a prediction. Might be wrong, but you at least have a chance. Plot the data over time. Histogram I showed you looks great. Whether or not it's going to remain so, there's more information available on the data. Use STC. Prediction is not a statistical judgment. It's a subject matter. It depends on what's going on and what the potential causes might be to carry out of control. That's based on what. All right, theory of knowledge. Plan to study X cycle operational definitions.
Speaking of statistical things, we were 20 minutes late on breakfast. We're only going to be 15 minutes late on lunch.
Okay, so let's start 12:15.
11:45.
So we can go longer. So if I run over, it's okay. That's good to know. All right.
But predictable.
Last name relatives.
Theory as a basis for learning. Theory as a basis for learning. Chanticleer, Canterbury Tales, the rooster. He had a theory. He'd wake up every morning and he would crow, cock-a-doodle-doo, he'd crow, and lo and behold, the sun came. Next morning, gets up, crows, sun comes up. He did this repeatedly, and he was sure he caused the sun to come. One day, Beck sleeps, wakes up, sun's up. That's fall. He didn't cause the sun. He thought, yeah. So no number of examples proves a theory. You got a theory that something's predictable in a certain way. You can state that as a theory. And it might appear to be true. It's never known to be true. You might become an accepted theory. But just one example that disproves the theory, disproves one example that doesn't follow the disproves. Very interesting. It does provide an opportunity to learn. You wrote it asleep. You gain a. You need to be open to the opportunity that things could be different. You need to be always open to the possibility. It's interesting how people they'll hold on to their theory and come up with all kinds of things. Yeah, but maybe this happens. Interesting. So plan to study X cycles. Plan to study X cycle. Plan to change your test. Then you carry it out. Preferably in a small step. Couple things. Did something go wrong with the carrying out? What are you doing? Change your value. So what are examples of this? What are some ways that this is put in use? Over what time period? What's the shortest time period thing you can imagine?
Instantaneous.
Say it again.
Instantaneous.
Instantaneous. So I think you need to, there's 4 steps unless you can replace it.
Well,
Forest.
yeah.
A little longer than this.
Right. Practically speaking, what are some examples of short term?
Press toxin and chemicals.
Say that again.
Look, if I'm the time, you planted to have talking.
Yeah.
Study, reflect the end.
Yeah.
The next one.
Yeah. Let's go.
Any company.
Or,
We have a real time example. My son just started driving, so kind of plan what we're gonna do. Does it, we talk and do some reflection, then next driving lesson, he's integrating those like next lessons.
very good. Very good.
Yeah, any company can use that before the launch of a product. They can just do a limited, launch and they're bring the plan, do a limited launch of it, study the reaction of the customers, and then based upon that, either roll it out entirely or say, we'll try again later.
And anytime you've got an improvement process going on, you're working on something. You don't take it all at once, you break it down. And so you take on something. And you need to have the ability to evaluate. You have a prediction what's you expect to happen. I wanted to, one of the things I really took away from my experience policy deployment or strategy deployment, you guys might have heard that. And I want to show an example. This is this is really deployment of the annual plan. The motion economy process is a plan, do, study, act cycle that has a period of 1 year. And it's when you plan, as Toyota does 10 years in advance, you take this year's set of achievable changes that you think you can make. And those get turned into objectives. They're not numerical objectives. They are what we want to try to achieve on the way to our goal. And those get deployed into the organization. Every level of management has their subset of things. There is a relationship between folks that are having the highest level of the next level down and the next level down. And that is exchanged over a period of a month. Is the way we did it. It's about a month process called catch ball. Evaluate what you can do, what you can't do. You end up with a plan. Plan is an annual plan. And on the one hand side, when it says priorities, it says implementation, who's responsible, there's a time scale there, and what's the planned time frame for doing the various pieces of implementation. And then results that are looked at. One, what was the result? And what was the, let's say, the activity that you conducted towards the result? So you've got an activity, judge yourself. And I did this after at UTC, where we were soft on ourselves. We love yellow. Toyota just red and green. We use yellow is within 10% or so. It's close. So activity, we have a theory, A, you get B. Now, judge yourself on the activity. How well did you conduct the activity that you said? If we did it, you get result B. That's the left column. The next element is, well, what was the result? Achieve the desired change. So the top one is green. Activity was good. Result was as expected. Nice job. There's other possibilities. Sometimes the activity is green and the result is yellow or red. What does that mean? You did what you said you were going to do, but you didn't get the result. What do you think? What does that mean? Your theory was awesome, right? You thought if you did this activity, you get this result. You did the activity, you didn't get the result. That's an opportunity to learn something. Reflect. What's different that we missed? You can also get a red. You get red as yellow. You didn't really do the work you thought you were were gonna do to get the result well. But the result came out anyway. What the heck does that mean?
You got lucky.
Set a soft target or got lucky, or you didn't understand the cost system, there's still something to learn there. And of course, red is you get the results. So this is a really useful tool. And I just want to share it here as a brand new study process that I found very useful. Found it amazing at Toyota. It's pretty good at TC as well. I got this to Terrace as well.
So if you sell out of green, so I take this down to, I don't know if people are familiar with the Toyota Kata, but at a like a work center, we would use the Kata storyboard to do experiments, do those kind of things. And if everything was green all the time, you'd say you're not pushing beyond your limit of knowledge, meaning that essentially it's just do it. I would assume that if I do this, I'll get this result versus I don't know that threshold of knowledge, and if I could push beyond that, I think this is the right thing to do. So I would expect to see more yellows and reds because it means that I'm pushing myself to experiment. And
Yes, I understand what you're saying. The way this was deployed was you're being thoughtful. These are big.
yeah, this
big
is the
deals.
top level, company level.
So probably not going to take risky bets.
As much, or some would be, right? If you're,
Probably, I can see that,
Yeah.
but that didn't come up around. Operational definition.
Can we go back to that chart for a minute?
Sure.
I'm having a hard time reading it, so I just want to make sure I understand it, because I've used something similar to this to manage projects, where we break it into digestible bites, and we're trying to do each item deliverable. But is this essentially the tactical version of a strategic plan at a corporate level, where you've identified?
This is what you're going to do this year to make progress toward a 10-year vision.
Okay. So the strategy is the 10-year
Yes.
vision.
And the strategy then is deployed at the top level to what do we expect our organization can accomplish towards that vision this year.
So that's the tactical.
And then that gets deployed to executives at the next level of the organization. What are they going to do within their areas of responsibility? But that's not just deployed. That deployment is then evaluated cross-functionally. There's a conversation, and there's discussion, and there's negotiation, and there's sometimes you make changes what you're going to do because you had assumed something on behalf of another department that they're not able to do.
Let's look at this process as it links the strategic and the tactical. So if we know at a higher level, we lay out what we're doing instead of just like we're doing one of the beautiful things about this process is it links both together so that we are really doing the right thing.
Yeah, because I couldn't read the text, it's hard to see. So the furthermost left column would be a strategic
It's a strategic priority.
Yes.
priority, and then you would have a tactical plan. Okay. And then you would have some kind of evidence of having achieved that or not achieved that, and a method or a process for achieving it. Okay.
This most left, where you see the words is the priority. What is it you're going to do? Furthest to the left, it shows the relationship of that priority to the senior-most team's priorities. Which top level priorities do you think we're contributing to with all?
Okay.
Right. A little bit complicated.
Yeah, like you played. Like how do or not? How many targets apply or not will be treated in a framework like this? Similar to other right? Where there's a whole bunch of targets that are fictional.
So I think
essentially objectives, management by objective.
These are transformational activities, capabilities, skill sets that you're trying to bring forward, things like that. They wouldn't use this for additional 10% reduction. Mistakes.
Right, okay, yeah, but it's distinctly different.
It's distinctly different. As I have learned it.
That's a nice tool.
Necessary to achieve. Right, when somebody's coming in and they're coming in, I said that it was like really prediction within a medium state framework. Yes, yes. All right. So operational definition, basic operational definition. A definition that supplies the customer means the same thing. It is when putting into practice or arrive at the number to describe a character. Two or more. So these things could be a specific test of a piece of material. Then we used to use the example of a blanket, which is 50% wool, 50% cotton. That's the 50% wool, 50% cotton. You draw a picture, draw a line down it. Left side's 100% wool, right side. And each on this blanket. Is that what you mean? So you have to get into what you mean, and it's got to be criteria, descriptions that people in business can do business with. That's all we want to do.
This is really interesting. So when I go on engagements, I talk about this and they'll say, well, I don't know, how that would apply. And then you start hear people throwing around service level or something. So, well, okay, what do you mean by that? And somebody will say, well, I think it's this. And then somebody else goes, well, wait a minute. No, in our area, we think of it this way. So coming out of the gates, out of that first day of an engagement, we come up with operational definitions that sometimes are significantly different than what the company thinks they are. But we come out and say, this is what's happening in the business right now. Whether you like it or not, this is really what's going on. And then we can decide.
How moment.
Yeah, it's an incredible moment.
The interesting assumption here is that we all see the world differently and we don't often own up to that. Because why would you not see it the way I see it? Of course you do. Vice versa. And if you don't make it explicit, you're right to find out.
Or it's good in the family too.
So this afternoon after lunch in this space, we'll talk about models.
All right, moving on to appreciation for a system. The system requires meaning. Talk about interaction. Talk about the rate and sub-optimization. A system. Systems vary in complexity. Example given. How complex is a mold to an explosion system?
Are you going out of order? Or did we already cover psychology?
Where do you like?
Did we already cover psychology?
This is not psychology.
I know, but are you going out of order or is there no order to that? For poets. So your model that has the 4 quadrants in a circle?
We're in appreciation for a system.
So it doesn't go theory of variation, theory of knowledge, theory of psychology, and appreciation for a system? That's what I was asking. Why didn't you understand it? I thought we were on the same level.
He's not a linear. Tough one.
And chronologically, psychology wasn't the last thing to be introduced.
Yeah. Well, when you describe what they were.
business. But at the various individual interactions, at interactions with departments, at interactions between suppliers and customers, predictions, machines, methods, unbelievable complexities. So this is an updated, out of the crisis, had the first view of this. Dr. Deming in economics had stage 0 and AIM to his description of the system. Organization viewed as a system, you have to look at the entire thing to understand it. You can't understand the results and therefore understand the system. You have to understand the whole thing. And since it is a system, it has to be managed as a whole. And generally speaking, that never happens. Generally speaking, folks draw little circles around these, call them departments, and then manage them independently. And what does that do to the system?
Right.
It's destroyed. There's now a bunch of little systems. And what's that cause? Some optimization. You're going to get some results, but not as good as they would be. Had you not done something.
So that eliminates synergy, doesn't it?
It does. It destroys synergy. It creates, what's the opposite of synergy? Dysfunction.
I don't know. Is there an opposite to synergy? Let's ask AI.
So, organization viewed as a system, optimization requires that everyone knows what their job is. Orchestrate all components toward achieving the aim. The system must be managed as a system. And what kind of, it says in the past, what kind of management do we have that fits? This is a bullet thing. Any wonder we're in trouble? So some things about systems, observations. Cause and effect exist, but you need to understand the whole system to make a prediction about what's going to happen. And there's time delays between one action and the reaction or counter. And when you look at a system, the whole system is unique. You break it apart to study pieces, you're no longer studying the system, which makes it complicated.
Right, and synergy, the whole is greater than the sum of the parts, right?
Correct.
Now, AI gave me an answer.
What's the opposite of synergy?
Antagonism.
Antagonism. Oh,
Spit it right out.
interesting.
Yeah, I wouldn't have thought that, but that's what it is, antagonism,
So
according to AI.
at one point in my personal transformation, I got really into systems. And I joined system thinking conferences and stuff like this. And to explain it, I was watching a PBS show one night, and I saw this example, and I wrote it up, used it. I found it in my sources, like all my old notes and stuff, and I scanned it. So this is an old graphic, so excuse the quality of the graphic. But I'm going to talk about an example of systems from ecology. And it's the ecology of the Pacific Ocean near and around Vancouver Island, British Columbia. So here's the system. It's a simplified model of the system, but there's a number of components and they have some relationships. So let's start with the salmon. The salmon, they exist with a couple relationships. The salmon are eaten by otters. And salmon, they like to eat little fish. So that's a very simple set of relationships there. The little fish are eaten by salmon. And they interact with kelp. There's kelp in the bays there. And the kelp provides cover and hatchery for the little fish. There's sea urchins out there. Sea urchins, they eat kelp. Otters eat urchins. And there's killer whales that eat otters. So that's a simplified view of a system. And it was,
They also eat salmon, the otters.
and otters eat salmon, thank you.
Yeah.
So that was how the system existed before 1900. After 1900, the system was modified. There's a new addition in the system. And the new addition was fishermen who were taking salmon. Previously, it hadn't been a big fishery, but all of a sudden there were a lot of fish, and it became some lucrative business. So fishermen came into the Vancouver environs and started taking salmon. So what's the same except now? Salmon fishermen take salmon eat fish, and others so with that change, we can take a look at how the fishermen viewed this. Okay, did they understand it this way? No, they understood this. They saw that there was salmon. They watched, they saw otters eat salmon. And their view was after the otters are done feasting, whatever's left over is what we can take. So they saw that as
Competition.
there was competition, and we don't want that competition. We're here to make some money. So, being fishermen was to increase the size of the catch. So their obvious solution is what?
Kill the otters.
Kill the otters. Right. So they limited sea otter population anywhere between 1930 and 1935. Okay. So what happened? Did it work? All right, what happened? Sea otters no longer ate salmon. Turns out that wasn't their prime source of food anyway. Salmon are hard to catch. They're quick. They're strong. They're big. That's why they're worth catching. Turns out that the sea otters ate a lot more richer than salmon. But they no longer eat. Killer whales no longer ate sea otters because they're horny. Understand? Otters no longer eat sea urchins. The urchin population skyrockets. Urchins eat the kelp. So they eat up all the kelp. So the kelp that is no longer providing natural nursery production of small fish. Population of small fish disappeared. Without food, salmon left the area to seek better conditions. Catch of the fishermen went to zero. The result of their action was exactly opposite what they intended. Nobody knows what happened. So it turns out the process was reversed. Repopulation, I'm not sure who did this, but I covered. They reintroduced sea otters that they gathered from Alaska, repopulated the area, and everything came back. About 1970, it's reversed the world conditions. So, understanding systems, it's not easy, is it? Look rational to the fishermen. Think there's any behaviors we take based on the faulty assumptions of systems and actions we take?
I've got one example.
What is it?
It was about welders in at Rocketine, actually, when I was there a long time ago. They would monitor the number of unacceptable welds through dye penetrant inspection for each welder. And they ranked the welders in terms of their expertise and capability. And the lower level welders, of course, were penalized, and they weren't given very good jobs to do. And they were not rewarded as well. And they decided that it would make great sense to give the most challenging, the most difficult welds to the most qualified, best performing welders. But of course, those challenging welds resulted in anybody that attempted them making more poor welds, right? And so they
So
dropped
just a
to the
cycle.
bottom of the list.
Yeah.
And they never seemed to have good enough welders to do those welds. They were all deemed inadequate to the job, so a lot of the better welders, of course, left. And management was left with nothing but the less capable welders to attempt those difficult welds. Yeah.
Yes, is that all the way, the youngster and the reinforcing.
The early data was good, right? There's bylaws.
See all things. Some population develop temporarily, and then drops.
Correct.
Yeah, but initially, oh, it's looking.
So we have to just do hard, you have to do it more because it worked less.
Delayed.
Yeah, I'm sure snapshot in time, it looked like they were getting a good return for putting the better welders on those more difficult welds,
Makes sense.
but not in the long term. They left.
Right. There's one question from online,
Yes.
from Dr. David Gilbert. That question, he says, what are the techniques used in problem statement development?
What are the techniques used for problem statement development?
I've seen that, but.
I'm not sure if I have a good answer to that off the top of my head.
Is he asking about brainstorming?
That's all I got. So then you put an email in there. I can
Let me come back to it. I don't have a great answer.
have a comment on that, and that is that sometimes you can put the effort into creating that really good concise problem statement. The answer kind of jumps out off the page.
Yes.
So sometimes it's a different problem, don't know exactly what it is. Think about it. Once it comes to the problem, that's the problem. It's almost clear. But in most
Restates
cases,
the problem.
yeah. But, you know, sometimes the problem statement is just the old smart thing, like specific measurable actions, those. Yeah.
Just mention one more. So when I drove in, I flew into Burbank and I was driving along, I think it's 5, Interstate 5, and I saw this, what looked like a water slide. And it's the cascade, the aqueduct cascade. I'm like, well, and I tried to get a picture of it and I jumped online. Well, I took a 2-hour deep dive into what the hell that thing was and where it came from. If you ever want to see something interesting, figure out how LA got its water or continues to get its water. And it destroyed the amount of damage was done bringing water in from 200-300 miles away just for one of the aqueducts. It's incredible. And then how the Central Valley got irrigated, why this state is the way it is. But I think if you ever want to look at it, just look up I think it's called the Cascadia Aqueduct or the Aqueduct Cascade, but it's the way the water comes into LA. And it's an incredible feat, where we try to, overcome nature.
Yeah.
If you'd have done it for a while.
All right, we'll get close to the end. Theory of psychology. People, motivation, and change. Motivation. There's intrinsic and extrinsic. Intrinsic people do things because it brings them joy. They want to do it. This type of motivation leads to long-term engagement. Extrinsic sources of motivation. People do it not through pleasure it brings, but for some kind of a reward they're going to get. They would not do the task, but for the reward or to avoid punishment. It's positive and negative forms of extrinsic motivation. And over-justification, when an individual receives an extrinsic reward for activities they may previously have done due to intrinsic motivation, when they observe the change relationship, they no longer think of it the same way. The best example of that I ever heard was from Alfie Cohn. I think we got OQPF, I think it was about 1990, told a joke. And the joke, working in his yard, springtime, and he's getting his yard organized. And it's springtime, the weather's good, and he lives close to a junior high school. There's some junior high school boys that would walk by his house on their way home after school every day. And they notice him. And they start making fun of him. Oh, you old man. Look at you, bro. What are you doing? He just went on, just being insulted, and they were doing about it. This happened before me, probably. Over the weekend, he thought about this. He said, I know what I'm going to do. So on Monday, the following week, they come up normal every day. Oh, look at you. Oh, look at you. He says, hey, boys. Here. Oh, my God. He said something. I want to get in trouble. No. Come here. Come here. I want to talk to you. What's up? He said, look, I've been appreciating you guys coming by and talking to me every day. So I'll tell you what I'm going to do. If you come here tomorrow and do the same thing you've been doing, yell, scream, call me names, if you do that again tomorrow, pay each of you $1. Oh, that's pretty good, they said. So
Yeah,
the
it's
next
work.
day, they even got some extra guys coming. So they screaming at them and yelling insults and everything. Oh, that was awesome, guys. Here's your $1, here's your $1, here's your $1. Tell you what, if you come by here tomorrow, I'll give you all $1. As long as you yell and scream, just do the same thing you did today, I'll give you $1. $1 not as good as $1, but all right. So a couple kids dropped off and some others showed up. So they yell and scream, insult him and everything. He says, okay, guys, that was great. Tell you what, if you guys come here tomorrow, yell and scream and call me names just the way you did today, I'll pay you all $10. Hey, forget it. We're not. So what happened? You were doing it for fun, right? And they did it for a fun. They'll do it for fun. They don't do it for God.
They lost their joy.
They lost their joy. It's no longer fun. So what happens? Sorry to follow this. I did this from a scan from a book. The New Economics, page 84, Forces of Destruction. Life begins, and you're born with intrinsic motivation, self-esteem, dignity, cooperation, curiosity, joy in learning. Kids have this. That's how they are born. Okay, 4 grandkids, 9 and below. They're amazing. Then they interact with our current culture. Forced distribution of grades in school, gold stars, merit system, judge people, put them into slots, incentive pay, numerical goals. What we do to people causes humiliation, fear, loss of joy, and learning. They lead anybody to play the win. Watch out doing learning. Motivation, general, but gradually replaces intrinsic motivation. Unfortunately, that's still pretty much true, isn't it? Much true. And Deming was saying we can do better than them. Evaluation of people. It's true that a person has a job and the results of the job can be measured in a number of dimensions. There's ways you can look at something that a person has done and make a judgment about goodness or something. But it's not just the individual. You've got an individual and you've got the environment and its effects on the individual. So individuals X, YX is the impact of the environment on that individual. And the results of those two things is something you can measure. You got one equation and 2 unknowns. So how can you say that it's individual? What about the environment? Well, either can solve that equation for X is entitled to give merit raises. Peter Schultes, I had the great fortune to work with him on a couple of different projects in his book. Three conditions that allow change to happen for people. According to Peter, people feel good about themselves. The change involves their ideas, the change involves their motivations. So why is it that people wouldn't feel good about themselves for change to happen? Well, yes.
They have the feel like sense of self-worth to have the motivation to, well, I'm worth investing in the positive.
Absolutely. When you feel good about yourself, you have some self-confidence. You can sense that I've got agency and I can do it. If you feel like you're down in the dumps and been abused, you're not going to feel like I can accomplish something. So it's really important as leaders to make sure that you're interacting with people in ways that leaves them feeling good about themselves.
You know, I hate to have to say this, but I disagree with it.
You disagree with it?
Yeah.
Tell me more.
I believe that many of our greatest innovators have emerged from adversity. And in many cases, they were rock bottom level of self-esteem when they said, I've had enough of this, and they turn around and create something amazing from scratch. And I think it's either the desperation of scarcity or the concept that they've got nothing left to lose that drives them. But I've seen more people achieve great things out of that environment than those that felt warm and fuzzy. The ones that felt warm and fuzzy just sit there and stew.
I think it's more about themselves though. I mean, if you face into adversity and if you don't feel confident that you can't make a change, then you're not gonna be stuck there forever.
Yeah, that was the intention I had with this. And I think, yeah,
There's some incredible poetry that's resulted from horrible abuse of human beings that I don't think we should.
I tend to agree. However, I don't think this is a solid concept. That's all.
Yeah, could you say that again? I'm sorry. Didn't hear what you.
There's some great poetry come out of just truly horrendous human conditions, right? I don't think that means we should produce, we should create horrible
Conditions.
I don't either, but I disagree with saying that that's the only way to elicit
I
change.
don't think Peter necessarily meant the only way, but it's a good way.
It may be the optimal way.
That's just a.
I want to talk a little bit about some personal perspectives.
Yeah.
We're in Bill Maher's overtime now, so we got, yeah, we need to wrap up soon. We got here, I got the permission right here. Lunch starts at 12:15. We go to 11:40. So I'm going to take advantage. All right. Personal perspective. I took copious notes when I was at seminars, exposure seminars, and I've got some ones I want to share, some things that I remember thinking very forward, and I think would be helpful to understand the guy a little bit. So, opening comments were always interesting from them. You always had a similar theme. November 7th, 1989. Why did you come here? The aim is restoration of the individual. Management in the U.S. has done a pretty good job of destroying the individual. All workers henceforth the opportunity to do a good job and to take joy in their work. We're here to learn for survival. There will be shock treatment. How do people learn? We must be open to new thoughts. This is not stamping out fires. Of course, we have to put out fires. How do you learn? Can't you learn? Learning must come from the outside. This comes as a shock. The customer does not generate ideas. He's a rapid learner with the new ideas that produces. Innovation comes from people who only have themselves to satisfy. Restoration of the individual, joining work, joining learning, collaboration is only a matter of survival that we do these things. And some Q&A from that session. What can lower level employees do? to help the transition. Learn it yourself first, look for chances to help rather than complain. It takes a critical mass of people to effect the change. The critical mass is equal to the square root of the number of people you must influence. I've never heard anybody else say that. Took it down word for word. Question: it seems the US culture is not ready for your ideas. Culture is what you make it. The company can do anything. The company can crush people or it can give them a chance. Opening comments, February 26, 1991. Why are we here? To improve living in material ways, maybe a spiritual way also will require trade. This requires you to have something to sell. Today, a market exists for almost anything. A product or a service possesses quality if it helps someone and enjoys a market. The system cannot understand itself. It needs profound knowledge coming from the outside. It's how I learn, and it's exciting. Help must come from the outside by invitation. Doctors can only help people who recognize they have a problem. The doctor, when sick, consults another doctor. The greatest costs are unknown and unknowable. And they're the ones we must work on. People chase nickels and dimes and do not mind $10 bills. Questions asked. This was at a gym seminar from probably the one I asked the book with. What one thing can we do to help GM as fast as possible? Eliminate the ranking of people, regions, sales divisions. Revise systems. Just because your competitors are just as bad is not an excuse. Opening comments. Why are we here? To learn and to have fun. Usually we'll say to learn, to have fun, and make a difference. These are quotes from this data. What business we are in must include the future. We are being ruined by best efforts. Without knowledge, you just dig the pit deeper. With knowledge, best efforts will get you someplace. There is no substitute for knowledge. Each individual will go through a transformation, maybe on the third day, maybe on the second, and it will be discontinuous. Questions? Tell you what, no, I got time. What's the difference between knowledge and information? That's the question. Answer. Means capital takes information. Why? The perspectives of sociology, history, economics, topography, understanding why this is knowledge. Without ranking, how do you choose new managers? You choose by comparing candidates. This is not ranking. All people are different. You choose based on who will make a good manager. Are you aware of any companies that transformation? No. Yeah, the teeth bear, which I can't do. No. In what instance would you consider competition good? In games, why not? Poker, one winner. In games, there's a shortage of winners. Why should we carry that over to the rest of life? You mean there's a shortage of good people? A shortage of good students? I don't think so. This is the best one I had. Is this socialism? You got angry at this one.
Just hear his voice.
I didn't. Win-win. Let's all win. Is that wrong? Everybody did that. Is that socialism? That is nonsense. And then he had the overhead projector and he started writing on the projector. He drew that. Definition of socialism is to pull people into the middle. Here's the distribution, and he drew the tails getting pulled into the middle. Move everyone up here. Everybody. We're not talking about socialism. We're talking about for everybody. Much more than we got now. Is capitalism inconsistent with optimization of the system? No, capitalism is not inconsistent. The problem is we do not have capitalism. We have free lose. how would you reward a top salesman that's doing all the things? Better question is, should we reward him?
Reward him for doing his job. He's only doing his job.
Regarding development of standards within an industry, doesn't that impede progress? Anyone who works on standardization knows that in 5 years, the standards must be revised. The standards are the road. How broadly should you define a system, a company, an industry, the country? It depends on how much you can manage. The larger the system, the greater the benefits, the greater the manage. So, I'll let you go.
Thank you very much. Kevin, this was a lecture. Right, well,